Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Aquarium of the Pacific. It's a pleasure to have you here this evening. My name is Jenny Dean. I'm the Aquarium's Vice President of Education and Conservation, and I get to be your host this evening for this first Wednesday lecture series. Today, we're talking about sunflower sea stars and their conservation, and we're here in part because of some wonderful donors who you saw on the screen, you still see on the screen. So let's acknowledge those donors. We have Stephen and Brendan Olson, the Osborne and Rourke Charitable Trust, and the Courtyard by Marriott Long Beach Hotel. So let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much for your generosity. We have a lovely audience here live at the aquarium, but we also have a wonderful audience that's at home. So as you may be familiar, these lectures are live streamed and then archived on the aquarium's YouTube channel. So if you didn't get into the room, we're glad to see you online or 6 months from now online. Tonight, we have the pleasure of using some technology in addition to a traditional presentation. So I'm going to ask our wonderful AV team to pull it up behind me. If you were here in March, we also used that technology. It's Mentimeter. It's essentially an online polling instrument that you will access using your phones. So this is one of those few times where we're wanting to use your phone, but only at the beginning. So we're going to do a poll at the beginning of this presentation, and then after the poll is done, we ask you to silence those phones and put them away for an enjoyable experience for everyone. So as you're scanning the QR code, or if you're at home scanning, I want to introduce our speaker. Tonight, we have Ashley Kidd. Wonderful Ashley is the co-founder and conservation project manager at the Sunflower Star Laboratory. This is a nonprofit that I'm sure you'll hear a lot about tonight, and I encourage you to check out their website. She has worked for 12 years as a public aquarium professional, and her passion really is aquaculture and supporting sustainable exhibits. She has worked with Seacor, which is a coral reproduction group that is international, doing international coral conservation, and has been involved in the white abalone recovery project, which you may be familiar with if you spent time here at the aquarium. She holds a master's in fisheries and aquatic sciences from the University of Florida, and has been, in that degree, was researching sunflower sea stars and the restoration, and she gets to do that work still today, so you're going to hear more about that. She is a wonderful friend and former employee of the aquarium here, and it's really a pleasure for her to be here with us today. So let's give Ashley a warm welcome, round of applause. Come on up.
Hi, everybody. I am really honored to be here as a former employee and also at the beginning of this wonderful summer celebrating sea stars. So thank you for coordinating that, whoever that was great. So on the Mentimeter app, I do believe that you should have access to the, click, yep, go to the next poll. Oh, how are we doing? There we go, okay. All right, so I hope, oh yes, go ahead, answer your questions. Ooh, okay, this is great. This is nice to know the audience before we start. All right, we'll have another few seconds for those numbers to dial in. All right, so I love that everyone's seen a sunflower sea star, or many have seen them in an exhibit, that's great, and so few in the wild, and we'll get to that, answering that question or that number in the talk. All right, next question. So now this is sort of seeing how many people, whether you use it for intertidal surveys or going on a walk in your backyard or in your neighborhood, have you used any of these two online community science apps, which the Aquarium of the Pacific uses and lots of community-based programs use to track wildlife? Awesome, okay. All right, so we'll keep that in mind, and maybe by the end of this, you guys will have downloaded an iNaturalist app for future use. Okay, thank you for participating. That was it. I hope it wasn't too painful. And we'll now transition over to the presentation. So welcome to the talk about sunflower sea stars. I have been highly focused on this one species for the last 5 years, and I'll get into that in a minute, but I'm just gonna tell you a story, so I've kind of set it up as a book. We're gonna start the first chapters telling you about the animal, where you'd find them in the wild, the neighborhood or the forest that they live in, who they are, and what happened to them. And then we're going to go into the more fun part of the doing and what we're doing to save these animals, and who is all involved. Because with any large conservation effort, there are literally thousands of people that are involved, and I will not do it justice in this one little talk. But just know that this is just the beginning of their story, and after I'm done this talk, which I will try to keep to the allotted time, there will be time afterwards to talk to me outside at the cocktail reception, and you can always follow us on our incredible Instagram page and our website. So for the last 5 years, I have been the sunflower star person, but before that, I was not, and I'm here at AOP, so my feet are sort of to the coals right now because I can't lie about it, since I would have people shouting at me from the audience in the darkness telling me that I'm a sham. But how did I get to work with this fascinating creature? Well, that was because I got to work with the White Abalone Project. I was a part of the scientific dive team here at AOP. I got to work on lots of life support and building systems. I raised some animals and got to inspire my colleagues to get excited about donning super nerdy equipment and get jazzed out about the smallest organisms we care for in the aquarium, which is the microalgae cultures up in the top corner here. As I was I oversaw the live foods program. But mostly I was just so fond of working here because of the incredible colleagues that I got to work with and inspired me every day, and gave me the confidence to go and pursue something in the same vein, but kind of in a new direction. So here we are at chapter 1. I want you all to sort of close your eyes and think of yourself as walking through a forest, whatever forest you're familiar with. If you've been diving in a kelp forest, amazing. But I'm gonna have them play the video and then pretend you're floating. Oh, oh no. I'm not in control. I feel like in life that's just a good lesson to learn. Up. There we go. So this is one of the kelp forests in California. So I really wanted to take advantage of this massive 3-story screen to immerse you in the kelp forest that you would find off the coast of California. So this is Mendocino, California in 2024. This is taken by wonderful videographer and photographer, Patrick Webster, who is based in Monterey and takes wonderful photography. This is a 22-minute video that you can find on YouTube that takes you through a kelp forest from Alaska all the way down to Baja, Mexico, and it's just a stunning ode to kelp forests and how those change over the course of our coastline. But what's really cool with the Mendocino coast is that you get bull kelp, which are these single stipe or skinny little things, and then you have also the beautiful giant kelp, which are also very common in Southern California. And I'm sorry that that video was a little sticky. So this is where their story takes place, really, and what all of the efforts with the sunflower sea stars are really in an effort to protect and restore. And not only is it just a beautiful place to visit as a scuba diver or a free diver, but it's also a very practical ecosystem for us and our existence on this earth. They produce oxygen, they sequester carbon, and reduce coastal erosion. So it really would benefit us to keep these beautiful kelp forests around. Oh, my goodness, sorry. And they also are an essential habitat for thousands of different organisms, from the largest whale to the smallest invertebrate crawling about at the bottom of their holdfasts that keep them secured to the rock. And one of the animals that live in this kelp forest ecosystem is, of course, the sunflower sea star. They harbor large amounts of biodiversity, and bullkelp.info is a wonderful interactive website where you can scroll through and sort of follow the ebbs and flows of the kelp forest from the canopy, so the kelp as it grows up to the surface of the water, and follow all the animals as they go down and learn all about them. So it's, again, a wonderful immersive website that celebrates all the recovery and restoration work that's happening in these kelp forests. All right, so we're now in chapter 2. We're now going to learn about our main protagonist with 20 arms. So this is the Pycnopodia helianthoides, otherwise known as the sunflower sea star. It is a animal related to all these echinoderms that you see on the side here. So that's part of a phylum that include urchins, sea cucumbers, crinoids, other sea stars, and brittle stars. But they're the only sea star in their genus, so Pycnopodia only has Pycnopodia helianthoides in it, and so it's kind of a unique sea star. And it has, but it has a very generalist habitat and tendency to sort of rove everywhere. These images are a collage of all the different environments that you might see them in. So not only do you see them in the kelp forests, but you also just see them hanging out on muddy or sandy plateaus, underneath a dock, hanging out on some wood, and also making a nice home in the seagrass. And they have generalist habitats. They're also generalist predators. They will eat urchins, bivalves, pretty much anything that it can fit in its mouth, and it will eat and scavenge fish. And also, it has been noted by a scientist that it's seen a sea star eating an octopus. So really, you just never know until you see it with your own two eyes. Now, this is a video that is going to demonstrate why it is called the wolf of the sea. I mean, these sea stars have 15,000 tube feet that help them crawl across the varying habitats that they find themselves in. And on the tips of all of those arms, you can see they've kind of got them turned up. There we go. So and you can sort of see the texture. You got the spiky white pincers, and here, we'll just go to the next slide. And some of the other really interesting features, which are common to other sea stars, are this madreporite, which is highlighted in the zoomed in picture, And that is actually the pore to the inside of the sea star. So that's called the madreporite, and its Latin name, it's coral-like, because it kind of looks like a little stone coral with those grooves. But inside those grooves are tiny little pores, and it pulls in seawater. This is true for all echinoderms. They have a water vasculature system, so they don't have blood like we do. They actually use, they filter water from the ocean to literally do everything in the body, from their locomotion. They have the water actually helps move their tube feet and move all of the nutrients around, gas exchange, all the fluffy, I call them fluffy sea stars. They make really good plush toys because they just want to be fluffy. And the fluffiness is actually, they call them skin gills. So instead of having a lung like we do, they just diffuse everything through those little fluffy bits of tissue that is coming out of their body. So they are nothing like us. Like, let's be honest. They are the furthest from. They've got eyes on the tips of every single arm. And that's the little red spot right there. So it's not an eye like us, it's a primitive eye. Again, these guys have been around for 400 million years, or sea stars at least. And they can see light and dark, and not specifically with Pycnopodia, but some research has been done on sea stars where they can actually make some sort of outline and understand the complexities of their reef to navigate through it. But yeah, so it is a tiny little eye at the tip of every single arm. And just for the record, every single arm has the exact same organs and set makeup, which makes it very convenient to also be able to drop those arms in case of an emergency or an attack. They have, for a sunflower sea star, up to 24 other arms that they can happily use to do whatever it is that they need to do. On the flip side of their body, you can see in the picture over here, they have, this is actually their mouth that they can avert their stomach out of, and so they can digest really awkwardly large pieces of prey and then slurp up everything, or they can just, give their prey a big hug and eat it whole. So they're very practical. They can pretty much eat anything they come across, hence the octopus. Speaking of growing arms, this is a stunning example of their regenerative properties. So all those tiny little arms are regrowing, and this is a wild animal that had gone through an altercation and is not dead, doing perfectly fine, regrowing all of his arms, navigating through the environment. Again, they are resilient animals. And for sunflower sea stars, that's a good attribute to have. And when I started working with sunflower sea stars, again, I wasn't a sea star expert when I started, but I'm trying to get there. I'm not there yet. But one of the things that really got me going was I had so many people who had seen sea stars and wanted to double check, oh, I saw a Pycnopodia, and they would send me all these pictures. And I just want to ask you guys, I can't see you, but does anyone think that any of these could possibly be a sunflower sea star? Oh, ho, ho, ho. Well. Oh, goodness. Oh, I'm death by clicker. Oh, my punchline. There we go. So those are all not sunflower sea stars. The ones, this guy over here is actually an Antarctic sun star. This guy here is a California sun star. This over here is a Gulf sun star. And this is a morning sun star. And this is a Pycnopodia helianthoides. So they are not unique in that they have multiple arms. I just want to share that with the world. But they are unique in that Rathbanaster is only found fairly deep in California. But because they're deep, they generally will just have a red or orange color, which is common for animals that are found deep. It's not a color that you find in the dark, so it's just what a popular color for deep water species. And then the Gulf sunstars from the Gulf of California, so they don't come over to the Pacific side of Baja. And then you will overlap with these morning sunstars, or Solaster dawsonii, but again, the color patterns are very unique and more stripy than the multicolored star, and through this presentation you'll see just the kaleidoscope of colors that they can be. And then of course, these guys are in the Antarctic, and I haven't told you what their distribution is yet, but they're definitely not in the Antarctic. And we're gonna come back to this because this is one of my favorite slides as a aquaculture person, but I just want you guys to understand that I just showed you a bunch of pictures of adult sea stars, and all marine invertebrates have incredible life histories, or just how they get from an egg to an adult. And the sunflower sea star is no exception. They have an incredible planktonic stage. So when this is the picture here of a adult that's spawning, and they release eggs and they fertilize. They're floating in the Pacific Ocean across all the continent as it's developing, and it has these larval bodies that the little orange gut is them full of microalgae, and then they settle into these teeny tiny half-millimeter sea stars and then grow and add more arms until the adult version. So that's sort of just a real quick overview of their life cycle. So they are alien and they're very cool. So what happened to them? Why are we here? Why am I here? So in 2014, 2016, I don't know if many of you remember that we had a warm water blob. We had a huge system sit over the Pacific Northwest and increase sea surface temperatures by 2.5 degrees in some places. This was a huge perturbation. Again, this El Nino events, this happens all the time, but this was an exceptionally warm and exceptionally long one. Over 250 days of this big heat body just sat over the Pacific. Now, at the same time, or just prior to that, another common event of wasting happened, but it wasn't common, really, because we saw this wasting happened. Again, wasting has been observed in many different species all over the world where sea stars exist. Again, you and I get viruses, sea stars get viruses too, or infections. That's as a cause of mortality. But it didn't really stop, and this warm water blob definitely did not make matters any better for them. And this is just, not to belabor the fact, but this is a map of the sea star loss. So 100% means all the stars disappeared. And this is us down here in Southern California with 100% loss. And it doesn't really get better, really, to any point. Maybe around the Salish Sea, you kind of have this little enclave of stars that, with all the complex coastal fjords, they had some refuge, but the numbers were staggering. Like, there were no populations that were safe. And it's bad when the title of a paper is A Decade of Death and Other Dynamics. They really tried to find so many different causes and what were the different environmental triggers. And I'm not a disease ecologist, but we definitely have the top people on the case, and they have been racking their brains for the last decade to try to figure out what it is. They have looked at temperature, at salinity, at nutrient runoff, to try to figure out how to explain the intense loss and abrupt loss and wide range of loss across the entire Pacific coast of North America, specifically with sunflower stars, but also realized this affected many different species. So it was unprecedented, not to overuse the word, but it was really the biggest and longest affected epidemic. And I know we all lived through one as well, so I don't want to cause any PTSD, but they kind of had us beat on that one. Like, it was pretty bad. Oh, this is my meme. You can laugh. It's really a stumper. We might have some news soon, but I don't want to make any promises. So what does that mean for the kelp forest and this wonderful home that it lived in? This is one of the publicly available resources that's on kelpwatch.org. It's a collaboration with Woods Hole and the Nature Conservancy to provide these kelp reports to sort of track the kelp forest's ebb and flow ever since this warm water event, so that marine heat wave. And you can see that this year was great for Southern California. The yellow they've made it back to at least that heat wave years. But that's not the case for Central or North California or Oregon, really. And I encourage you to explore that website as well, just to sort of see how they're tracking the ebbs and flows. Because again, we don't know exactly what all the variables are, but we know what we know, and pictures say 1,000 words. So this is unfortunately what most of California used to look like, or at least Northern California. Technically, those are giant kelp, and it's a bull kelp dominated forest, but really all you're seeing now is rock. So that's sort of what that map looks like in real life, just that loss. And this great schematic, just trying to understand what the dynamics are. So I just want you to focus on the fact that oh my gosh, here we go. After this 2014 sort of event happened, 2013, sea stars went down, urchins went up, kelp went down, otters went up. And the otters went up. Don't otters love eating urchins? Like, why is the urchin going up? Well, just keeping that in mind, even though we had some otters in Central California, Northern California lost all of their kelp, and all these urchins just kind of hung out, and it eventually shut down the red abalone fishery, because abalone and urchins eat the same thing. They like kelp. And these are some of the photos from the Central Coast, just looking at what an urchin explosion looks like. They're everywhere, like literally hanging off the rafters. So who eats urchins? So I kind of like tipped us off saying, we've got our sea otters and our Pycnopodia, sunflower sea stars. They were going up, they're going down. Otters in the Central Coast and Monterey were going up, but the urchins kind of remained. In Southern California, you guys have some redundant predators of urchins. You have your sheephead and your California spiny lobster. We don't really have the same in Central and Northern California. So we're trying to figure out how the sunflower sea stars were one of those key predators that are now absent from the area, and how they affect sea stars, or urchins, differently than sea otters. How can we help restore the balance? Because the otters weren't doing the same job and the sea stars aren't there anymore. And if you think about it, sea otters, they don't have blubber. And if you've listened to any of the stories that the aquarium tells of sea otters, is that they don't have blubber. They need to eat a lot to survive, so they want calorie-rich food. So they're not going to eat urchins that have just gobbled up all the kelp and are just nutrient deficient. But those sea stars that can slurp up all the tissue, they can eat all the tissue around those urchin spines. And they can get those calories that an otter just doesn't have the time or the need for a little slice of a calorie compared to a nice healthy urchin, just like we do. We want nice uni to eat. Okay, so that was sort of, thanks for getting through that with me. That was sort of where we're at. We lost our kelp, our sea stars aren't doing so well, so what are we gonna do about it? So I wanna do a quick rundown, just a recap. So 2013 sea star wasting, we lost them. The aquariums lost the stars too. Our entire coast lost stars. We wanted to know what to do about them. There are already people in aquariums trying to treat these sea stars from the wasting disease. They start tracking sea star wasting because it just wasn't going away. And in 2019, Dr. Jason Hoden at the Friday Harbor Labs was tapped by the Nature Conservancy to take on this aquaculture responsibility and try to figure out if we could breed the sunflower sea star as part of a restoration effort. And in 2019, he did just that, and he published his findings in 2021. And in 2020, partners of the Pycnopodia Recovery Working Group, so all these researchers that sort of assembled the disease ecologists, the larval ecologists, divers that were taking all of this incredibly important monitoring data, we're all coming together to figure out what are we going to do. And one of the leaders, Dr. Sarah Gravum, put together the IUCN listing, and it was accepted as a critically endangered species due to the massive loss. And coincidentally, in 2021, I was wrapping up my master's. I was attending my first Pycnopodia Recovery Working Group meeting, and I met a guy called Vince Christian, and just remember that name. And I was talking about how few sea stars we had in California, but with players like the Aquarium of the Pacific, the Birch Aquarium, we were in good hands. We could start from the few stars we had to at least start addressing the questions and replicating the work that Jason was doing up in Washington down in California, where we really had no sea stars, sunflower sea stars to work with. So this is just a snapshot. This is the power of social media. So in 2021, after Vince Christian had read an article about the plight of the sea stars in Jason Hoden's lab, he drove up to Friday Harbor Labs, met Jason, and Jason was like, you can totally do this. Go start a sea star recovery program in California. And Vince, he was a marine biologist, but had no aquaculture background, said, great, I'm an engineer, I can build the wet table, and I'm gonna call the community to see if other people feel the same way. And so now he is our star father. And really, a few months later, I wanted to join. I'm like, yes, I just spent 2 years talking about sunflower sea stars and researching them. Let's do something about it. So this is our board from December 2021. We started a nonprofit, and we've been meeting ever since. And so we're fairly new, and we've literally not stopped working since we began. And again, it was truly all the work that I was able to do and the breadth of work I was exposed to at the Aquarium of the Pacific that truly set me up to help form this nonprofit. We started in a garage, like all good stories do. When you don't have any money to have a lab, you convert your garage into a pretty darn good lab. We were successful at raising microalgae. We raised and settled bat stars, again, all through proper permitting. CDFW, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, did know that we were in a garage, I promise. And really just got our feet wet, because when you're trying to work with the critically endangered species, you better get some practice in. And 2 years later, we were able to move into a proper converted warehouse, and were given carte blanche to build our lab. So a few months later, we did just that. We had all of our wet tables and larval culture bins built out, all through the volunteer support through our community. And again, community, very talented community. And we were able to continue the conservation aquaculture that inspired us to start the lab in the first place. Now we have Andrew Kim and Mariana Jimenez, who are our lab staff, and who are doing a phenomenal job taking care of our beautiful juvenile sunflower sea stars. And there's Vince, very happily tending to the stars that he had the dream of working with all those years ago. And we are a conservation nonprofit from the community, for the community. And we couldn't have done this all on our own. I'm sure you might have been thinking, well, we didn't just sort of have magicians working with us. Who were all these wonderful people that got us these sea stars? Well, let me tell you about the 1,001 people that we work with to get us here, and many of them are here in the audience or tuning in today. This is, again, just a small snapshot, but it was the first time we had an all-in-person meeting where we brought together the Pycnopodia Recovery Working Group, so those disease ecologists, Jason Hoden, he's there in the middle. We've got some Monterey Bay Aquarium folk, some ex-AOPers in the crowd, and just really coming together to take Pycnopodia recovery into the next level for California, but also for the population as a whole. Part of the Pycnopodia Recovery Working Group in 2022 developed the Roadmap to Recovery, which is a guiding light in the absence of any state or federal listings. Again, this species has no protections in this country. It's just listed by the IUCN, which does not impose any regulations on the country. So this is truly, again, driven by the Nature Conservancy, was just trying to build the best practices so that it doesn't take 20 years for action to come in. But again, we had California Fish and Wildlife in attendance. They were really encouraging to have this networking event. And so from there, I just want to go through, like, so much amazing stuff has happened from so many public aquariums and Aquarium of the Pacific. We were able to work on cryopreservation, which is a major conservation tool. And Jason invited the Sunflower Star Lab and San Diego Wildlife Institute up to Friday Harbor Labs. We had the first successful ex situ spawning at the Birch Aquarium in 2024, which allowed all of our California collaborators to, for the first time, raise these animals. So we had tons of people just get a lot more experience. Aquarium of the Pacific, Cal Academy of Sciences, Cabrillo, Cal Poly Humboldt, Monterey Bay Aquarium, Moss Landing Marine Labs, and the Sunflower Star Lab now have hundreds of baby sea stars, and we've gained all that institutional knowledge and inspired, I think maybe, the stars of the sea. You know, it's just been such a wonderful experience to work with everyone. And we're also making sure that we're all talking together. So we had workshops to share all of this work. And now, because we are a SAFE project, which is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums conservation arm, we now have exclusive funding to SAFE program funds, and we've been able to go up to Alaska to do more cryopreservation and breeding programs. And we've also started an eDNA project, which, again, when you think about the huge loss over thousands of miles, how are you going to actually know how their recovery is doing? You can't just put scuba divers in and like swim from Alaska to Baja. So the environmental eDNA project, so eDNA, E stands for environmental, it's where you can take a water sample and the DNA that's shed from the animal, so like when you rub your fingers together, you're actually shedding cells and you're leaving that trace. So for a sunflower sea star, we're trying to understand how much they release of their DNA and how easily detectable they are. And because they're really fluffy, they give off a lot of eDNA. And so we want to be able to know what the sampling schedule is across our coast so that we can sample eDNA across the coast and then get our divers in the water in areas where we get positive hits. So these are all things that started in the last year, all for these little sea stars. And I'm gonna leave you guys, I'm gonna wrap up, with some stunning photos of their competent to settle larval stage. So these are larvae that have now floated in the plankton for a month, and the orange spiky things is called the rudiment, and that's actually the juvenile sunflower sea star just floating on the tip of now this very large larval body. And over a day, it's going to search out a place to settle, and it's going to absorb that huge translucent body and settle onto the seafloor. And that tiny little orange piece is going to finish its metamorphosis and turn into a little 5-armed sea star. So these are our little babies. I know, I should have just gone here first. So yeah, and they already start growing multiple arms. They've now spent a year growing in the lab. We've been able to, again, partner with Friday Harbor Labs to use their measurement tool so we can get really accurate surface area measurements of them and feed them urchins. Oh wait, hold on. That's a video. Oh. Oh no, again. Here we go. This is a good one. So this shows sort of the behavioral, the urchin really wanted to get away, but didn't really have a chance. And then you can actually see the urchin that it ate just behind it. There's nothing really left. They're very good at eating everything. They're very clean eaters. All right. So yes, if only they were this big. I mean, how crazy would that be? Yeah. These are just sort of like beautiful shots from, again, volunteer photographers that come to the lab and take pictures. And so just a little flash crash course in what we just went through. It's a lot in a few years. I feel it. But we've really been able to do so much because of the traction and the support from public aquariums and the collaboration between academic, nonprofit, and truly like collaboration in as it should be. And you know, there are researchers that have been doing all this wonderful behavioral ecology research in the field in Alaska, where there's still sea stars to work with, and they're really giving us all the ammunition we need to make the case for sunflower sea stars to be reintroduced, again, just for the animal themselves to persist, but also because only by putting them back will we understand how they can rebalance the kelp forest ecosystem and bring those kelp cathedrals back into our state. And so I did talk about iNaturalist and Marine. Look them up, download the app, go for a walk, take a picture of a beetle or a butterfly, and it's an incredible crowdsourced app where you can learn about your local environment, and also go to a seashore. And if you see sea stars, again, the Marine app or the Marine website talks all about sea star wasting and how you can identify it and how that will help us for any sea star to help understand how they will recover. And you can also just call us up, put up the bat star signal, and ask your question. All right. And we're writing the next book. This is just the end. Thank you so much. So now I think we can take questions from the audience. If you want to ask a question, please wait for the microphone to be handed to you because of the at-home audience. They won't be able to hear you if you just speak without the mic. Okay.
Great job, thank you. I am curious about the progress of the wasting disease. Was this the same in all aquariums and the ocean as well? Or was there a difference in some aquariums that might have had a closed system of water?
Yes, thank you, Val. So yes, closed system aquariums did have a benefit of not being open to the ocean. However, before we really knew what this wasting event was, if aquariums that were closed systems were still collecting wild animals and bringing them into the aquarium, if they were asymptomatic or not showing any disease, they could introduce disease into those closed aquariums. But primarily the ones that were open system, so they pull water straight from the ocean to service all their aquariums. Like many of the aquariums on the Pacific coast, they were all affected. The only aquarium was the Birch Aquarium that is open system, but that didn't have wasting take them all out. But they also had a chiller on that one particular system to keep the water really, really cold.
I have a question. With the sea stars, have they been able to regenerate? I mean, has the population grown anywhere? Or is it just one of those things that it's one and done?
Yeah, there are, for sunflower sea stars, in Alaska, they've sort of seen it halt the decline. Sadly, even areas where they were less affected, there is now this baseline wasting, like there's a 2 to 5% sort of wasting that's observed pretty much everywhere, and that is, again, through the monitoring captured in marine. Again, yeah. So, but really understanding what animals have resilience to the disease is an active area of research right now, or why they are all different.
Have aquariums changed their policies on bringing in like outside animals that they bring in to prevent sort of sicknesses from spreading?
Yeah, I mean, this wasting event, there's actually, at the time, and just for context, I just moved to California in 2013. So I came into California right when wasting was hitting our coast. But there was also another wasting event on the East Coast. And all aquariums, again, were taking precautions, but also just to allow the natural populations to recover and endure that. There was, for many years, there was sort of a moratorium on taking any sea stars. Yeah, again, keeping them healthy is important. So there are, Tiffany Rudek at the Oregon Coast Aquarium has created a protocol to treat wasting. So even though we don't have a vector, that she has been able to recover animals that have shown wasting at various stages. And that's been promising and really great that we've been sharing through our network on how to actually care for these animals and understand the welfare of these animals. Yeah.
I have 3 questions. First, how big are these? Second, how are they different than the sea stars I knew as a child? The ones that the traditional looking ones is the only thing I can think of to say.
Like a
And third,
5-armed sea star? Like just your typical 5-armed?
Yeah, typical. What's the difference?
Like your
And then the third
stereotypical.
question, could you say what the app is again for nature identification?
Oh, yeah. It's iNaturalist. And I can't even believe if I didn't mention this. They're 3 feet it's big. Yeah, they're the biggest sea star you're ever going to see. But when they start off, they're 0.5 millimeter. So they can be very big, but they can also be really any size in between, depending on how old they are.
Hi, up here.
Oh.
Once you have a robust population in the aquaculture, is the plan to outplant adult sea stars, or will you be trying to outplant juveniles too, so they can settle where they find the best habitat?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. That's the question we want to be able to ask now that we have more that we can work with. And these are critical questions that we want to have, because it's a lot of time to take care of animals. So there are lots of factors in deciding what's a good size to put them out. But yeah, great question.
I have a 2-prong question. So the first would be, with sea star wasting, do we know what the cause is? I know you talked about how there was a big heat wave in the ocean, and could that be something like how the proteins denature within the starfish body? And then also, how did you figure out what are the conditions that are suitable for them to be kept in aquaculture, or when you're trying to regrow them?
Yeah, these are really good questions. Again, for the disease, they were really looking at everything to try to figure out exactly what the combination is that elicits a actual wasting event. And right at this point in time, we don't know exactly what it is. There are definitely stressors, and just like you or I, you get to a tipping point where your body just doesn't have that ability to fend for itself, and it's something, again, that we're working on. Marine invertebrate diseases are elusive, to say the least, even with coral diseases and urchin diseases. Sea star wasting disease has been a challenging syndrome to study. Again, I'm not a disease ecologist, so yeah, I can definitely point you in the direction for looking up those questions. But from the aquaculture standpoint, again, using their native environment, using all those water quality metrics to give them the environment that works well in, and then experimentation. That's why we want to have more institutions involved that can try different ways to improve their welfare and survivorship through all their life stages. And I think we're last 2 questions? Okay.
What outstanding problems need to be solved, and specifically what research is currently being done?
So the research was so that's the next book. Again, it's sort of a continuation of all the chapters we went through in terms of aquaculture studies, optimizing it for restoration, optimizing them for research, genetic studies. Is there resiliency in these stars? Can you inherit it? Building up those cryopreservation banks, so that's frozen zoo for easy description of it, again, to help really collect what remains of the genetic diversity in the remaining population. Again, we've lost all of them here, but there are millions of sunflower sea stars in the world still, between Alaska and California, and we want to be able to preserve those so that, if there is some other stressor, we have those banks built up, and also to help us with the research, so we have sort of those genetics on demand. And then the eDNA work, the environmental eDNA, and continuing to support those long-term monitoring programs is really important to know sort of how these animals are recovering in the wild. And with that comes the reintroduction methods and outplanting trials. So those are the next steps that, again, are active discussions with all of our partners.
Hi, I was just wondering, I was looking into the sea star wasting disease, and it said something about the microbiome of some of them being like imbalanced. So do you think that some are more targeted than others? Or I was just wondering what you knew about that.
I don't have the answer, but if you think of how fluffy they do have a huge surface area, and when you're talking about a microbiome, so all that life that lives on that interface between the animal and the ocean, you could imagine that the bacteria that are symbiotic to that live on the surface of the star, if it's warmer waters, all those metabolisms also increase. So yeah, I don't have the answer to that, and those papers are really fascinating, and it is, again, just on the docket to be researched. Up until a few years ago, there was only one place in the world that could culture these animals. That was Friday Harbor Labs, and just in the last few years, we've been able to replicate that work and expand it so we can conduct more research.
Great presentation, and thank you for that round of applause. But also, can you just wait here for a moment? I found out something really interesting today. Ashley had a big birthday this week.
Oh my God.
And I didn't get her a gift, but I thought you could be part of the gift if we could all sing happy birthday.
Oh my God.
To Ashley, who has had 200 people sing happy birthday to them?
Oh
Not
my
very many
gosh.
people. So you're welcome. I am not a good singer, so I'm going to take a step back, but I encourage all of the great singers to belt it out. I'll get us started. Happy birthday.
Oh my God.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday,
Wait.
Ashley. Happy birthday to you. Woo! All right, the embarrassment is over. You can have a seat if you'd like.
I did not see that coming.
Let me give you a few instructions for the rest of the evening. So as you're all familiar, we have a lecture or a presentation or a film that happens, and then we invite you guys to continue the conversation. So a handful of people got to ask questions on mic. You get your opportunity to ask your question of Ashley one-to-one if you didn't get that opportunity on mic. She'll be in the reception area along with a cash bar and a wonderful craft this evening. So we invite you to descend to the ground floor the same way that you entered the facility to participate in those activities. And we want you here next month. Next month, we're going to be talking about fire recovery response and some activities that the aquarium and other partners participated in the recent Palisades fire. This evening is also special because we're celebrating the opening of Stars of the Sea, which, thank you, Ashley, for that plug. So the theme of the aquarium's new exhibit and many other exhibits around the aquarium is sea stars. So you can learn more about those sea stars when you visit on a different day, and you have the opportunity to help support our work through a conservation donation. So check that out in the lobby. If you do support the conservation tonight, you are entered into a lottery to win a ticket to our whale tail after party. So thank you so much for being here tonight and all of your support, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care.